Executive Director for BPHL, and I head up innovation at Independence Blue Cross. And I am here today with John Fry, President of Drexel University. I'm super excited because Drexel was a huge part of BPHL last year. John, thanks for being with us today. I know you're really busy.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So I'm going to jump in with the question I know is on a lot of people's minds when it comes to higher ed and universities. I teach at Temple. I know this question has come up a ton. With everything going on, there's been a ton of speculation about if colleges and universities will reopen in the fall. I know Inside Higher Ed outlined 15 possible scenarios for the fall. Some of them were really innovative, things like block scheduling or an intensive first year where only freshmen to campus, or kind of a blend of some virtual and some in person. So can you talk about Drexel's response and how you're thinking about this and making tough decisions for the fall?
Well, we have two big advantages. The first is that we're on the quarter system, so we don't really start until September 21st. So we have a little bit of time to sort of game this out. And the second is a large part of what we do at Drexel is health related. We have a School of Public Health, a College of Medicine, a School of Nursing and Health Professions, a School of Biomedical Engineering. And so we have a ton of expertise and talent. So what I did is I put together a task force and said, look, give us the various scenarios for returning in September and talk about, the pros and the cons, but let's lead with our expertise on health, because the most important thing is what can we do to make sure that if we are able to return, people are safe and they're healthy and they're confident that we have the infrastructure to protect them. And so we're sort of leading with that, and then we're looking at sort of variations from, how much in-person can we do, how much is going to be a hybrid experience, how are we going to leverage our online capacity as well. It's a big group full of experts from my faculty. They'll report to me at the end of this month, and I'd like to be able to make an announcement about what we're doing in the early part of June. So that's our hope right now. And, one of the things that, we can call on in a university is this enormous level of expertise we have throughout our faculty. And so I think that between the extra time that we have and the expertise in our faculty, that should lead us in a good direction. And then I'll take their recommendations and make a decision.
That's great. That makes a ton of sense. You mentioned your expertise, and I think that really comes forefront in a lot of ways through Drexel, and I want to talk about some of them. But one that I'll mention is you've really been instrumental in forming a response to COVID in the community. You've done a lot at Drexel to respond to COVID, and some of your experts have been coming to the forefront there. Can you talk about that and those efforts?
Sure. So, if it's okay, I'm just going to refer to some notes because there's a lot.
There's so much.
Yeah. The first thing we did is we formed a rapid response R&D fund. Our trustees contributed several $100,000 to get us going. We have about 20 projects that are looking at various types of things. So the first is producing medical masks and face shields. In fact, I get a report every week on the amount of masks that we're producing. It was about 5,000 last week, and then face shields, we did about 2,500 face shields.
It's amazing.
So and these are going all over the region, to hospitals, to nursing homes, to other medical providers, to make sure that they have the capacity, the PPE capacity to meet the demand. And so in some cases we're using high-tech machines to print these masks and shields out. It's a really sort of neat pivot that we've done with some of the expertise that we have in design and engineering. We've created a new app to track infections, which we've just put out a few days ago. We have vaccine-related research. We're doing a lot to chronicle sort of mental health concerns and issues among the population. And there's just been a ton of R&D done around this. In addition, we're gathering supplies to donate to hospitals, especially St. Christopher's Hospital for Children. We're one of the co-owners of St. Chris, along with Tower Health. We've raised about $150,000 for a student emergency fund to make sure that our students whose lives have been disrupted by all of this over the last several months have the ability to have what they need to feel safe and comfortable. And I know we'll probably talk about it later on, but in our West Philadelphia community, where we're stewards of the federal promise zone, we're basically in conversations with our neighbors about what their needs are and how we can help them meet those needs. And so, whether it's students in our community or people out providing healthcare in the region or neighbors in West Philadelphia. We're trying to understand what their needs are and sort of rise to those occasions.
That is so incredible. I don't even think I realized how enormous that list was. I had a couple of things in my mind, but that's really incredible. You say these things, and I'm very optimistic, and I have been. But there are weeks that your optimism starts to wane as it kind of goes on, and we're in quarantine longer. But I think those are a lot of reasons to be optimistic. I'm wondering what else is keeping you optimistic that Philadelphia is going to rebound after this.
Well, I think about the fact that Philadelphia over the last 20 years has done so much that maybe people were skeptical that it could achieve. And I think that, first of all, we have a lot of really good collaborative structures. Dan Hilferty leads the Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce. We've had so many phone calls over the last and Zoom meetings over the last number of weeks talking about how we're going to work with the public and the private sectors to stage a rebound. We have so many collaborative structures that we put in place, say, as a result of the Amazon bid. In University City, we have the University City District. We have all sorts of collaborators around cell and gene therapy. So people are really used to working together. So that's kind of asset number one, is that we have great people. They want to share. And we've developed a cadence in terms of how we work together. But when you think about Philadelphia, despite how devastating this has been, our assets are intact. We have great anchor institutions, like IBC, like Comcast, like Pico, like Drexel, like Penn and CHOP, and the list goes on and on and on. We have a great location. We're an affordable city, and we're a center for healthcare innovation. And maybe among all other assets, that's the most important thing right now. People really look to Philadelphia nationally and internationally to solve problems. And so I think we're in a very, very good position, not only to help with the aftermath of COVID-19, but also to position ourselves as a city of tremendous assets, tremendous teamwork, with the ability to be empathetic and humane, and really lean into these types of big challenges that we're facing right now. So I'm like you, I'm very optimistic. People have been great, both here at Drexel and throughout the city. And I think our bounce back will be quick.
I love that. We are the city that can, right? Like, I really believe we are underrated, and people who aren't from here don't always know, or people who don't live here don't always know how much we have to offer and how much we do band together. I always say we're like a big city, small town, right? We have all of these resources that do connect and that do know each other and that do work together. And it's just really incredible. And your work has been phenomenal. You mentioned the Promise Zone. I want to jump to that because I think it's so amazing what you've done. So Drexels started and helped to start and designate this area, this 2 square mile radius in West Philadelphia called the Promise Zone. And with that, the Promise Neighborhood Program. And what I know about it is that it focuses on improving education and health outcomes for kids that live in that area. What I think is also interesting is that unfortunately we're seeing, and we know that communities of color are being harder hit by COVID-19. So I'm wondering how programs like the Promise Neighborhood innovate to really help improve outcomes in those areas. And if you can tell us a little bit more about it.
Sure. So this is a network that was formed in 2014 when President Obama designated the first 5 Promise Zones in America. West Philadelphia was one of them. We're very proud of that. And I think first, it's a network. It's a network of not-for-profit organizations, neighborhood organizations, eds and meds. We've all come together to collaborate, to think about how we can improve access to high quality healthcare, deal with food insecurity, deal with public safety issues, provide hope through these collaborative networks. And I think the Promise Zone really sort of pitched a big tent for us all to come together and to begin to get to know one another. And there's a lot of historic distrust and sort of lack of understanding between and among all these communities. And so the last several years since we started has been about building trust and building relationships and creating real collaborative opportunities to work together. And I have to say that the city, the school district of Philadelphia, our university, but especially the residents in these communities. And there are probably about 10 distinct communities within the Promise Zone, and they're all very different. They have their own histories. They have leaders who are now coming together and working. And one of the first things we did is formed a community advisory council. We are meeting via Zoom right now to understand what the issues are. So, for example, there's an obvious focus on health, how to protect yourself, where to get tested, how do you self-quarantine, how do you get access to PPE, which is one of the things I was showing you before in the charts, because we've been allocating a lot of that PPE into these communities. And I think what this has demonstrated is that people really care about one another, and we're going to work together to try to make sure that we all get through this. I can tell you my frustration is that not having direct sort of physical access to these communities, and we meet all the time. It is usually staged at our Dornsife Center for Neighborhood Partnerships, which is an extension center that we operate in Mantua. That's become our sort of kitchen table for all these groups. And Zoom is no replacement for a community dinner, which we have every month. And so there are frustrations and there are barriers. But on the other hand, that spirit is still strong. Those relationships have been tried and tested, for the last 6 years. And, as a result, we're making progress, but we really can't wait to get back to that work. That is our focus.
That is so incredible. I think you mentioned empathy, and I think one of the things that I admire most about the work that you do is you really do put the people at the center of it. And that sounds obvious, but it's something that we forget to do sometimes, right? So as you're going and you're doing this work, you're really remembering who's at the center of it. You have a very student-centric focus when it comes to the way you operate your campus and the school, and then neighborhood programs like this, you have a really central focus on the residents, and that's so important, right? Everything we do in my day job is human-centered design and understanding people, and Drexel's really especially good at that, which I really appreciate about you and the way you run things. And really incredible.
Yeah, and one of the things I think we've learned over the years, and I think there's a tendency for institutions to take this approach, is that we're the solution and we're searching for the problem, as opposed to taking a much more humble approach where we're really only as good as we listen. And I think so much of our time is spent building community, listening, trying to understand, trying to figure out true collaborative networks between our neighborhoods, our neighbors, and ourselves. And it has been the most awesome experience. We learn as much from our neighbors as they've, I think, benefited from our presence and the things that we've tried to do for them. And I think it's especially important right now to sort of keep that going in whatever way we can.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I really appreciate that, and I hope you'll get back to your dinner soon. I agree with you that Zoom and this way of doing business is no replacement for that human interaction that we need. You have, so that's a big piece of what you do in your focus. And when you came into the role, you said neighborhood improvement was one of your big issues you wanted to focus on, and you've done that without a doubt. I think what I also appreciate is that you've built a really big effort around entrepreneurship and design and understanding and helping create that in your students. You have so many initiatives and so many institutes and programs. My next master's is going to be in urban strategy. I really love the urban strategy program that you guys have to offer. It's phenomenal. I've already reached out to get information about it. I could use a second master's. But I think, you've also created the Philadelphia Fellowship, working with Jefferson and the Science Center to focus research on issues in the city. You had the Lindy Institute, which is where that master's lives. So tell me why these kinds of programs and innovation are so important for cities and really for a city like ours, for Philadelphia. Why do these things matter? You've touched on it a little bit. You've talked about connectivity. Anything else you want to share there?
Well, I think, when you think about the future of cities, especially now in the era we're in and the so much pain and suffering in cities, right now, I think that it requires a multidisciplinary approach. The idea that you can have one angle, an urban planning angle, or a health angle, or a sort of public space angle. I mean, all those things are important. But I think what we try to do through Lindy, the Institute for Urban Innovation, and through the Dornsife Center, and a bunch of other collaborations that we've had, with Jefferson and with the Science Center and within University City, around workforce development, for example, the West Philadelphia Skills Initiative, is to realize that rarely are these problems and these challenges one-dimensional. And so the whole idea is to approach this from an intense interdisciplinary approach to think about things not as a series of verticals, but as one big horizontal where you can connect, all the various disciplines and all the people who have expertise, bring them together, do it, as you pointed out, in a kind of a human-centered way with an emphasis on listening and an emphasis on building collaborative community. And then going about your problem solving in those types of ways. So pretty much everything that we do is taking that broad horizontal approach, bring different disciplines together, set broad tables, bring together people in ways that are, friendly and enjoyable, with, the opportunity to break bread and to enjoy one another's company, and also to maybe lose a lot of preconceived notions you may have about other people or other disciplines. And I mean, there's nothing really special about that, other than the fact that you need to do it on a regular basis over a long period of time, and eventually you establish the kind of culture that I think is being established right now of working together to improve our community, but taking a broad angle view of those challenges.
I think it's really special, actually. I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job of that. And I think it's special because as you build that and you help your students learn that as they're going through their college years, they come out better able to contribute to the workforce, but also to the community. And that's so important. We have on my team an amazing grad of your Master's of Public Health program. She is utterly phenomenal, so I'll give her a shout out. We're also working with a couple of Drexel co-ops this summer on doing some journey mapping, so using some of those tools. And I think by and large, the people that come out of your programs are just phenomenal. And so I think it's evidence of the work that you do and how you've thought about that, and it's really made its way into everything that you're doing. So kudos to you for that. I think it's a big deal. It's very special. So let me shift gears. I have a 22-year-old who, with very lackluster fanfare, graduated on Thursday from college, and I'm wondering. We ordered takeout Chinese. That was our big celebration. So I'm wondering if you have any advice for the graduating class of 2020. I'm sure they'd love to hear it. I know you've shared some, but tell me more.
Well, I think the first thing is that your college or university education is going to serve you well. It right now, so much of the joy has been taken out of it, and the final goodbyes, and that is so much a part of the experience, is how you capstone it with a wonderful graduation and commencement and celebration. But no one can take away your education from you. I mean, you have that, and you'll have that forever. And while times are difficult right now and opportunities that were abundant have vanished, they will come back, and you will be prepared to grab those. So I would say that's one thing. The second is that, being in this environment right now, you've learned to adapt. You've learned to pivot very quickly. You've become digital learners. You become digital leaders. That is going to be a set of skills that's really going to serve you well in the future. So, for example, about 80% of our co-ops right now are online. And I was talking to one of our major co-op employers, and he said, it may seem like a big disadvantage and a disappointment to have an online co-op as opposed to being, in community with our particular business, which is very dynamic and very sort of human-centered. But these kids are developing the ability to work remotely, and we never could have taught them in this way except for now. So he thinks that's going to be a big competitive advantage, the ability to work remotely. So I think that's a second thing. And then the other thing I would say is that this is a time, I think, for some that they may just want to pursue, other opportunities for education while the employment landscape is uncertain right now. Not to be self-serving, but we're hoping many of our students who are graduating will stay with us, because I think we can provide them some additional cost-effective opportunities to continue studies, to get their masters. And then, we're also in a world of hurt in so many of the communities that we just talked about before. This is a brilliant opportunity to really give back. There are so many people who have been so negatively impacted by what's going on, particularly in some of our less fortunate communities. This is an opportunity for people who are trying to figure out their future right now as recent graduates, maybe to take advantage of some of the opportunities to work in those communities. And so I don't think time will be wasted with a college degree and with all sorts of great prospects in front of you, but just be optimistic. Things are going to get better, but in the meantime, there's plenty for you to do.
That is great advice. I love that. I think flexibility, you hit on it, the ability to be flexible and pivot is probably one of the most important skills you can have in the workforce, and they're getting that right now. I'll also shout out to you, you have a Master's of Creativity and Innovation that's online. It's a great time to get that, guys. Now's the time. Creativity and innovation applies to all jobs. So we had a question come in. How do you think the recent influx of technology and virtual learning will shape the future of education?
So we've been doing online since the late 90s, and we have probably in our student body of about 24,000, 6,000, 7,000 students a year are virtual learners, mostly at the master's level, some at the undergraduate level. So we've been believers for 20 years that this type of education is really important and viable and flexible, particularly for people who are working full time. And so I think this is just completely fast forwarded, everything in this direction. And I think for my faculty in particular who haven't had the opportunity to teach online, it has been such a profoundly challenging and stretching experience. I'm so proud of how they've risen to the occasion. But I think for higher ed, more and more people now have had experience in this, and they may have not given it much attention before, and now they have to. And I think that's going to make them, better at teaching than they were before. So I think in terms of our capacity to deliver education, we've become a lot more flexible and a lot more nimble. Yes, because we had to, but also I think it's going to impact in a very, very positive way the way we think about teaching and learning going forward. And I think we're sort of platform agnostic at this point. I mean, of course, we want everyone to come back in September in community, in a safe way, to learn. But we're also really good about the hybrid opportunities that we'll offer. We're really good about the online opportunities that we'll offer. The fact that we should be offering all of these in a flexible way is something that our students should expect of us, and we should be able to deliver. So while this has been wrenching and difficult, I actually think higher ed is going to come out of this in many ways a lot stronger, because it had to learn new things, and it had to be versatile, and it had to be flexible in doing so. And so we're really excited about this, because we think we've developed all sorts of new capacity that we didn't really have before.
It's an exciting challenge. I'll say from the faculty side, I ended up teaching a master's class online this semester that I intended to be in person, of course. And I think it really is a fun challenge to think about. Somebody commented experience counts, and it does count. And I think it's a great challenge to figure out how you can create an amazing experience in an online model, or in a virtual or a hybrid model rather. So I think you're right. It makes us stronger and makes us really approach things in new ways, which is what it's all about.
Right.
So we just have a couple of minutes left. There are first of all, lots of alumni showing some love in the comments. So I'll just shout that out. And a lot of people sharing all of their love for Drexel. Yeah, it's really nice. So I guess I'd love to hear what you're most looking forward to in the days after quarantine, what you want to do personally.
I think we've all been given an opportunity to sort of reflect on, everything that we have, and how much things mean to us, especially when we don't have them. Just the simple act of coming back into community together, I think is such a wonderful thing. I just can't wait to begin greeting people again, and I can't wait for our community dinners at Dornsife, once a month with our neighbors. I mean, simple things that you begin to take for granted, you no longer take for granted. Another thing is to figure out ways in which we can show more appreciation and support for people who labor in many cases in obscurity, but do essential jobs. I think about the people from UPS who I see every day when I'm at home working, and who come in, and we greet each other and thank each other. And I didn't do that before. I don't think I appreciated that. And now, when I go to the grocery store, I'm so grateful for these people who are really taking chances. And so I hope we can find a way of thanking everyone, not just the people who have visible jobs and who have a lot of acclaim, but the people who really make our communities and our country work, and to thank them and to think about ways in which we can, show and share that kind of appreciation. And so I feel like the instinct to give back has been redoubled because so many people have shown so much goodness and strength and courage to us, and we need to make sure that when we are able to come back into community, we think about what more can we do for people who are unsung heroes who deserve, the opportunities that we're lucky enough to have. And so I'm thinking about those two things.
That's a really beautiful thought to end on. I love that. I think the show of humanity has been really incredible, and the kindness, and in the midst of a really challenging and scary time, that's come out, and that's been really, really amazing. So John, thank you so much for the time. Again, BPHL was in part successful last year because of Drexel, and we had a lot of work from the Excite Center, which we didn't mention yet. The Excite Center is phenomenal, and the work they do is unbelievable. Yes, literal robots, but also just incredible stuff around fabric and technology, and the folks there are really visionaries and incredible people. So we really appreciate all that you're doing, not just in the education world, but for the community around you, and for education and for the kids, and for improving, the lives of the people around Drexel. It's really incredible. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Michelle. I really enjoyed our conversation, and thanks for
stay safe. We get to see you soon.
Okay. Thanks. It's great to be together, Michelle.
Thanks,
good luck with
John.
everything.
Have a good one.
You too.